we're going to talk a little bit about how do you get money in this space. And it's mostly at the private stage, but we might chat a little bit about the transition from private to public as well. And I thought what we would do to get started is, candidly, each of us introduce ourselves because our opinions are based on our experience and our perspective. And so I thought it would be good to do that. I might start. My name is Bill Link, and I've been active in the ophthalmic space only for about 41 years, so just trying to get a rolling start on this. And after starting a couple of companies, one we sold to Allergan called AMO, and one we sold to Bausalam called Chiron Vision, then I got into venture investing. And I did a count the other day, and I've actually led the investing in 23 companies. And so it's been pretty active over the last while. A lot of that's anterior segment. I'm a rusty engineer by background, and so I had to get the courage to work my way to the back of the eye. I guess 5 of the 23 companies I've invested in are retinal and posterior segment. So there's a little bit of a lower on the learning curve and maybe lower on confidence in the back of the eye than in the front of the eye. So I thought I would be candid and express my insecurity related to the back of the eye. But it's been a fun, amazing journey. Versant Ventures we founded in 1990. And it's been in 99 rather, and we've raised 6 funds now and have a very, very substantial commitment to the ophthalmic space. And then a few years back, I started some direct investing with an informal partnership I formed with a couple of colleagues we call Flying L Partners. And now we've done 4 investments in ophthalmology using that vehicle as well. So that's kind of the range of activity that I've been up to. Ron?
My name's Ron Weiss, and I am a managing partner along with Rob Rothman in InFocus Capital Partners. We're both ophthalmologists in practice over 25 years and 20 years, respectively. We're geographically disparate. I live in Chicago, and Rob is a glaucoma specialist in New York. We're a New York-based venture fund focused mainly on ophthalmics, investing mainly in Series A, B, and occasionally seed investments. Although we've done several one-off deals in the past, we structured a formal fund about 6 months ago and have already made 2 investments thus far, and 2 more are imminent. We've looked at over 60 deals so far, and that number continues to rapidly grow. We focus on companies that have seasoned management, a unique or disruptive product, an attractive valuation, and a reasonable timeline to monetize. We know that we're going to be evaluated by our IRR, so that last point is very important. Our advisor board is made up of ophthalmic thought leaders, both as practitioners and operators, as well as world-class financial advisors. And all of our advisors are investors.
Hi, I'm Angela Macfarlane. I'm a partner and CEO of ForSight Labs. Let's start with my ophthalmic background, because it goes before that, but I joined Jean Dewan at ForSight Labs. That was started in 2005, so basically the last 13 years in ophthalmology. Went to my first meeting the year Lucentis was approved. So, that was kind of a watershed moment that I didn't quite, realize at the moment how powerful that would be in retina. So we have started, we're a little bit different from the financing standpoint because we are actually entrepreneurs, and we provide not only access to capital through relationships with venture capitalists and family offices, but also entrepreneurial input from Jean and myself and our colleagues at ForSight. So we've started 6 companies. And they've really been the gamut, as you say, Bill. We've been in back of the eye, front of the eye, cornea, retina, and have really, I think, realized how difficult it is to raise capital. I mean, we can talk a little bit maybe about that, but also how important it is to select not only the project you're taking forward, but also as an investor, kind of the investments that you make. So our first company was Transcend, which exited to Alcon. Our second company was Vision 2, which exited to QLT in drug delivery. Third company in cornea, so contact lenses, which we licensed. The fourth company was ForSight Vision 4 in posterior segment drug delivery of Lucentis, which I think we're going to hear some exciting data at this meeting. And fifth company was again drug delivery, which exited to Allergan in 2016. Sixth company on the way, working in medtech. So I was glad to see that slide from Piper Jaffray that it's outperforming. Medtech is outperforming biopharma, and kind of seventh company in process. So that's the background.
Hi, I'm Firas, Rahhal. I'll be at the ASRS meeting. Most of the people at this meeting would know me as a vitreoretinal surgeon, which I've been for 23 years. I'm still in practice, obviously, in vitreoretinal surgery. I'm part of, in that capacity, part of a large retina-only group in Los Angeles known as Retina Vitreous Associates. It's a high-volume clinical center and heavy participation and leadership in clinical trials, which may be how I came to this other capacity, which is as a partner in ExSight Ventures. I helped found ExSight Ventures with a number of others in 2014. ExSight is a small venture capital firm focused solely in ophthalmology. We will invest from seed rounds on through Series A, and we even made what I would call a backdoor Series B investment, which was successful as our first investment. The group is 7 individuals located in New York primarily, Boston and Los Angeles, myself. It's made up of 2 vitreoretinal surgeons who are active in their clinical practice, myself included, 3 investment professionals with long history in VC, private equity, and particularly in healthcare, and 2 individuals who are attorneys with IP expertise and VC expertise. We've made 4 investments to date. One of them exited. It was our first investment, and that was the one we made in the retina realm. So I'm happy to discuss that later if it comes up. And we're seeking the same things that that the InFocus guys are seeking, right? Great management, disruptive technology, disruptive therapeutics, and we're always talking to lots and lots and lots of innovators. Retina is a particularly innovative area, but everywhere, glaucoma is a very innovative area right now. So that's us.
Very good. Thanks for those nice backgrounds. So we're all about ophthalmology, and this meeting is about the back of the eye, okay? And so for us, do you do anything outside of ophthalmology from an investing standpoint, your team?
In a word, no, but I'll caveat that. There are some areas that are pseudo-ophthalmology right now, and we're actually interested in them. We have a very specific thesis. Our LPs understand our thesis, and part of the reason they're LPs with us is that thesis, and so we're quite limited based on our own personal experience and expertise, plus our commitment to our LPs to stay within ophthalmology specifically. But those outside areas that I'm alluding to include things like neurodegenerative disease. There's as many people here know, as you know, there's a lot of fascinating technology really evolving quickly in ophthalmic imaging and how it relates to diagnosis, management, clinical trials for neurodegenerative disease. That would be an area we could have interest in that didn't directly, say, affect ophthalmology, but utilized ophthalmic principles.
So Ron, what about you? Anything outside of ophthalmology?
So we're actually mandated to do 90% ophthalmic investing, but companies are coming our way in order to bring an ophthalmic application to some of the technology that they've already developed. And that's been something new and really interesting moving forward. So one of the companies that we're looking at that we may imminently fund is that.
Got it. Angela, staying in the space, doing anything outside of ophthalmology?
We're broadening, I would say. I liked what you said on looking at neurodegenerative diseases and also CNS and other indications there. So I think that what I found with the focus in ophthalmology was when we first started ForSight, people said, well, you're going to run out of ideas. That was the fear. And, it's just not.
Hasn't happened
yet. Although things took longer always than we thought. But I think that, I think once you get into it and you see the continuing clinical needs, I mean, we're seeing just in these first sessions how much focus there is on really getting that outcome for the patient. And that's just still what drives us.
And so one of the things we thought we would talk about is availability of capital for the ophthalmic sector broadly. And let's go early stage first. What stage do we like?
Well, I think it's difficult to raise capital for early stage opportunity. It's hard to find an outstanding CEO, preferably one that's had prior success in the past. It's difficult to articulate a pathway to monetize when you're early stage, and that's something very important to us. And 3, ensuring that their IP is robust and well protected is something that could be very expensive to evaluate, especially in an early stage company. So these are 3 thresholds that make it difficult for early stage.
So where do early stage entrepreneurs and physicians who have great ideas find capital?
I want to echo first the comments made. I think despite the excellent data just shown in the public markets and the availability of funds in ophthalmology, I think the overwhelming proportion of that is in the later stages. And I think the early stage in ophthalmology, like in so many other areas, and I'm not familiar with them directly, but tech had this history in the beginning as well, is that early between friends and family round and Series A round is kind of a gap and a very difficult area to get funding. And it makes good sense that it would be difficult. This is high-risk stuff, and you have to have LPs that understand and want and are comfortable with that level of high risk. So on our side, raising the money can be difficult. And for the innovators, I don't have data about numbers of dollars, but what I can tell you is anecdotally, what I've seen in these years that I've been doing this is we might identify, we've sourced over 300 ophthalmic companies in these 4 or so years, which is incredible to think there are that many that exist. And several dozen of them could be said to have a great scientific idea, a great plan that they want to execute on regarding preclinical work and proof of concept, and then great planning for their clinical trial and ultimately their commercialization, and have good management in place. And yet 12, 18 months after we first met them and we're learning about them, they're still looking for that same round of money, which initially surprised me to a great extent. So to more directly answer your question, where to look, it's a tough question, but I would encourage all innovators to really exhaust and look for non-dilutive funding in the early stages. There's a sort of plethora of public and private grant type money, including military. I've seen a lot of people make good use of that. And I think that becomes really attractive to have that on board working when they come to people like InFocus or ExSight to participate. That's a very attractive feature. So I would encourage all young companies to really look at that, and some may not be doing so early enough.
So Angela, just let me make a point here, and I want to hear your perspective. When we launched ForSight as an incubator, there were 2 and then 3 venture firms that stepped up. Versant was one of those that did the primary funding. We said, okay, we even did blind pools. We said, okay, here's a small amount of capital. come to me.
It was Nirvana, Bill. Okay, it was Nirvana.
And let's go find
you
something.
spoiled me completely.
Go find something of merit. And then once we found something of merit, we would fund it, and you and Gene and the team would push it forward. That's transitioned very substantially. Why don't you take us through that journey?
So the blind pool or the pre-funding model in terms of incubation was really perfected kind of more on the med tech side, and we took on that model. And what it allowed us to do was really look at multiple opportunities and be able to make progress in real progress, preclinical, sometimes even, looking at early clinical tolerability, and then make the call about what the company would be. I think this nicely reduced risk both for the investors as a very prolonged due diligence. You talk about 300, you can't look at this many deals. I mean, you're basically saying, I like it, but I don't like the management team. I don't like the I like the I like the management team. I don't like the technology. I mean, you wish you could take the good things out of that and create the company that you really want to invest in. And that's what ForSight allowed a little bit to happen. And it was very efficient because we could really run quickly and get to the nitty-gritty without having to raise capital for 18 months. What I came to realize in ophthalmology is that the bar is incredibly high. Clinical data is the bar, most likely for funding, unless you have something incredibly fundamental and you have really caught the imagination and the passion of a venture investor. And so it's a combination of all of the objective things you've said, but it's also that, is my idea transformational? Is it worthy of this 18 months of fundraising and this 20 million I'm trying to raise? And I think along the way, entrepreneurs who can be humble and willing to take the feedback of the many people they'll talk to and really incorporate that in if they want this to fly, if they want it to get funded, kind of go into that iterative mode and be able to come out with something much more powerful. Because I'll bet it's a delight, it always is to me, when I have an entrepreneur comes with an idea and you go, okay, don't go after, dry eye, go after it. And then in 6 months they come back and they've taken some advice, they've incorporated some thinking, they've gotten some more data, and that's really, really powerful. If you see them again and they're making the same pitch, you want to just take them aside and say, let's be self-critical and critical of what we're pitching. And I think the more candor you have in your processes at the early stage, the better the ecosystem will survive. Because when it gets too full of people out there raising money for 18 months, it's a very small community, and we need to make sure that we're bringing best deals forward, best ideas forward, and that's what ForSight allowed. I actually think that now that we have maybe less immediate access to capital, it's allowing us to be more critical and more focused, and I think the type of deals we're bringing forward are that much better.
I agree 100%. If I could add for a moment, yes. Another piece of advice is seek advice early. In other words, start the dialogue with a potential funding source, such as our groups, early when we're pitched and the pitch is sort of in 4 weeks we have a closing. Are you in? You've heard about the deliberation and the methodical way this may go on for 18 months. That's not only unrealistic, it doesn't allow really any time. If they would approach early, even before kind of financial deadlines are just around the corner, to start that dialogue that you just discussed, I think it's really helpful to get the feedback, which they do from us and from many like us, to maybe just change the message. It can even be a mediocre slide deck could be improved to help their cause. It's sort of like the investment innovator version of foreplay. Like, don't come in right at the end here. Try to develop a dialogue for a period of months with a group that might learn about you.
I agree. We won't take on any research projects because we know that pathway is just too long. But we like it when we're engaged with these individuals and keep in touch. We have a very methodical process, and any entrepreneur that presents and says we have to have funding within 4 weeks, that's not anything that we're interested in. We appreciate somebody who's honest, doesn't overhype, because it's usually very transparent when that happens. So,
Yeah, let's talk about candor. and maybe even humility, okay? A lot of times, innovators and entrepreneurs we have strong beliefs, and we're really fired up about our idea and so forth. What do we listen for as you're thinking about which team to invest in? Talk about what works best for each of us.
It's a great question, and it's a delicate question. And I will say that my partners at ExSight are better at this part than I am, and have tried to contain my frustration at times that may come about from what seems lack of humility is a correct application of the term, but maybe perhaps something less stigmatizing would be an unrealistic presentation. I think where I'm looking at that specific point is with the innovator and/or their choice of managers who may be making the presentation, is how realistic are the claims? How realistic are the timelines that they're projecting? And at least for me in the post-year segment, because of my personal training and experience, it comes clear to me relatively quickly how realistic the projections are. In some other areas in ophthalmology, we would rely on advisors to help us with how realistic the claims are. But that's the part that the humility comes into for me, is the initial presentation of the course and what we can expect from the development.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit in how people are wired, and I think we look for a lot of what might not be as obvious traits as, you know, the timeline in a presentation. I think that we want that passion and that enthusiasm, no question, but I think it's very easy within 5 to 10 minutes of meeting someone to understand if it's someone you want to invest in. And you don't say that to kind of freak people out, but I mean, okay, 2 minutes, Gene takes 10, 15. I don't know, because he's got like on a...
You need my partners to tone you down. Yeah. That's rough.
But I think it is, I think it really is this, just be excellent. And being excellent means that you're going to incorporate feedback from others. You are going to benchmark your claims. You are going to look at other clinical trials and how long they took. You are going to make those statements about, well, if this doesn't happen, then this, then we're going to be able to, you know, switch to this, or we're going to have this we're raising additional capital, or we don't want to raise all the capital yet because we understand this is a key risk we have to reduce. We're going to raise less capital, which might mean, you know, they take more dilution in the end. I mean, there's a whole, it's not magic. You're not convincing someone to give you money and then you walk out kind of, you know, rubbing your hands together like, you know, it's a partnership. And so it's just all of those good things that make a great partnership. And candor and humility are 1 and 2. We love curious mind. We love, you know, people that want to be impactful and, you know, go outside the box. But that's a balance.
And to expand upon that, you know, a great leader will pivot, and, you know, they'll take the advice of a group like ExSight or InFocus. You know, we have a robust advisor board that, you know, can help these partnerships that we're all doing together. So that and transparency. Recently, we spoke with a company who had established that they had a strategic relationship in place. And we haven't funded this company, but they immediately called us to say that partnership is in jeopardy even before it came.
Wow,
and so we
yeah.
really appreciated it. It made us like them more and to stay with them. And so your point is well taken.
That's an excellent.
Yeah, so balance and candor. Arrogance fails. Okay? So if we're too confident, our relationships can't be sustained because it's not a balanced relationship, whether it's with a friend, with family, a professional, or an investor. And so I just think, you know, let's stay grounded in that process. And so raising money and building value is a gestalt. It's a set of a whole complex bunch of activities, and we know It will not go perfectly. We know we'll have setbacks. And so how we behave when things aren't going well is who we are. And so one of the things I've learned is that as a team member and an investor, when we make an investment, the shortest time from investment to exit I've ever had was 3 years, and that was amazing. And I've got 5 companies that are past 15 years. I had red hair when I first invested in those companies. These are long-term relationships, right? We're talking about that. And so I think both as the innovator team as well as the investor, you want to make sure there's a match and there's a culture that is going to be okay and solid, and you could support each other when we hit those bumps in the road.
And I would say criticism means that someone's interested in you.
Yeah,
I mean, taking the time to say, I don't agree, or let's tease out this other, that shows that you've piqued someone's interest. So you say, I want more of that, please.
We're going to talk about the criteria, the boxes that need to be checked in order to qualify for an investment. And one of the things we did as we formed Versant back in the day, we established 4 distinct criteria. Okay, and I'm going to recite those, and then we'll just see how that works for all of us. One was the market. Is there an honest, sizable, unmet need? No kidding. The other is the technology. What's the approach? Is it disruptive? Is it meaningfully different? And can it make a difference? Third is the team. And fourth is the path, the capital intensity and time to exit. So those 4 criteria. And if you check all 4 boxes, it's an easy decision. Almost none do. And so if you use those criteria as your framework, which of those are more important? How do you assess each one?
So that's exactly the criteria that we use.
Yay.
These 4 are the most important. I would put at the top of the list, though, a seasoned manager, a CEO that has the ability to pivot if necessary, is a good listener, is humble. That's critical. The other things come into play, whether it's disruptive technology and the others that you mentioned, but that's absolutely critical.
I agree. Actually, of the 4, for me personally, the 2 that stand out are the science part, the disruptive nature of the technology, and the management group, which sort of plays into the course. But I think that our first investment, honestly, was made on those 2 boxes checked, and it panned out well for us with an exit. There were some questions about the other 2 areas, but with regard to the management team, it was really probably the strongest point we thought, the managing CEO, let's say, and the science, which was brilliant. And I would favor those 2 things, and I would add that some of my partners might feel a little differently who handle some other areas within the business. Within your 4th category, I would put a .A for IP, the long-term execution. We have one person on our group who's really sort of IP expert and IP intensive, and we've seen some nice companies that had a couple of holes there that we recommended that they fill, and could have been, for us, dangerous territory.
I think for us it's a little bit different in the way we've done company spin-outs and selecting the technologies, because I think as entrepreneurs, we always, just naturally impute, well, how can we change this future versus is it okay now and I'm being more of a passive investor or an active investor, but I'm bringing money to the table, I'm not directly leading the company. So I think that we would put transformational idea, like game-changing, even now more than ever, and particularly in retina. For me, it has to change the game. There's a lot of good things coming forward, and they're going to be better for patients and necessary. But I think we want to take more risk there.
So, thanks. We have to exit and make money in order to have capital available to make ongoing investments. And so let's talk about the value creation, the realization of the value. And when we assess a new project, we have to think about if things go well, as things go well, what's the exit? Okay, how is the value going to be established and calculated, if you will, and earned? And so M&A deal, IPO, et cetera. Let's talk about both.
So prior to InFocus, I have a 17-year history of venture investing. So mostly in life sciences, but also outside of life sciences. And the companies that we had the greatest returns with were through an IPO. We've had acquisitions, and that pathway is usually shorter, but our largest returns were through an IPO.
I think my comment there is that if you're starting a company to sell it, you won't sell it, you won't get as much value. I think it's really being able to have investors who have the capital to take you forward so that you're not kind of forced one way or the other. And I think that the IPO is an amazing vehicle when you can get there, because it not only allows some liquidity, but it also allows follow-on investing, and it brings its foibles, which is distraction, et cetera. But it's really nice to have that, and it's really good to see that that's a strong market. I think that keeps us in a good spot. I think companies are bought, not sold, and I think creating, looking at what the metrics are important in a space. I think retina is very robust there, but the ability to create the desire on the part of the other person to do to the other company to do something very impactful really pulls that into an M&A scenario. And so I think that being open to both and really looking at building the ultimate value is the key, and hoping that you have the longevity of capital support to do that. And if that's private, awesome. If it happens to be public, then I think that's what you do. I think you prefer to stay private and focused, but you've got to continue to move the program. So
I agree with both sentiments. Our situation might be a little different, and I have a slightly different perspective on this, but I do totally agree that the greatest return would probably be if you go the distance and go IPO. And I do also agree with what you said, Angela, that the initial intent should be to try to go the distance, at least psychologically, because that generates energy and motivation. But for us specifically as an investment group, and consistent with our own thesis, earlier exit, which is more likely going to be acquisition or strategic partnership, really is more favorable to us. And the first reason is a simply practical one. We make smaller early stage investments, and to go the distance, especially if you're talking a therapeutic with the C-level, B-level money, the dilutional effect could be great to us, and the patience of our LPs may grow thin over that kind of duration of time. So that's just a practical matter. But more theoretical is within our thesis, we're claiming to be helpful and value added in those early stages, and recognize that a strategic partner at the C level, or late B level would be more effective at commercialization and late clinical, phase 3 clinical trial type administration. So we're realistic about who we are and where we fit in. So for us, earlier probably better.
And also teaming up early with a potential strategic partner. One of the things that, if I look back 20 and 30 years of so-called venture investing then and now in the healthcare space, and specifically in ophthalmology, one thing we work hard at now, and it's working enough that it's a strong signal, that is we try to partner with a corporate player early and get advice, money that's less dilutive than equity investors, and potentially can then march and build and achieve to partnership/exit in a more capital and time-efficient way. And those structured deals at Versant, we kind of describe them as a build-to-buy deal versus build it and sell it. And so that's another transition that we've seen over the last while.
Yeah, I mean, we've exited a company in 9 months. We exited one in 10 years. And we did strategic relationships early on in 2, and, you know, not in the others. But I think having looked at those, you know, just be very robust about that potential and be open to it.
Well, the innovators are often hyper concerned about the strategic partnership because they feel and are worried about what will happen to their project and their product. And it's one of the reasons I think, favor groups like InFocus and ExSight to come talk to early, because we're in ophthalmology, we're only in ophthalmology, we're ophthalmologists, and that's been very gratifying. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right. Well, we try to facilitate these relationships. So some companies, you know, want us to help them, and some shy away from it. But at InFocus and ExSight, we have those relationships with strategics that we want them to be involved.
I'd like to thank the panelists for talking about money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for.